What President Trump is trying to sell, the American folks aren't buying, and we can see it pretty simply here. Take a look here. This is consumer sentiment, their current conditions. Consumer sentiment can be the current conditions or it can be future expectations. We're looking at current conditions. And get this, according to the University of Michigan, we are dealing with the worst ever view of current conditions dating all the way back since 1951. And get this, Kate, it is down 30%. Consumer sentiment of current conditions down 30% from January when Donald Trump took office. No bueno.
The American public's sentiment toward the economy is absolutely tanking. They are not happy with continuing inflation, the fact that it's just harder to make a dollar stretch, and that could be good political news for the Democrats, considering the fact that the Trump administration is currently being blamed for our current economic situation, which is why political strategist James Carville is now saying, you guys need to double down on populism and you need to do it now. He makes his case by essentially arguing that Democrats need to run the most populist economic platform since the Great Depression. Cenk, your 2 cents.
Yeah, look, we won. So the progressives that wanted these policies have won over even the most establishment figures like James Carville. Now, of course, there are 2 other parts to winning. So I want to get to those 2 parts. But first, get a load of what Carville's saying. And then later what Tucker Carlson is saying and how this country and its politics is changing so dramatically. This story shows it perfectly.
So the piece is titled James Carville Out with Woke, In with Rage. So in this instance, what he does is he couples an argument he's been making, the argument that wokeness has actually hurt the Democratic Party, with the argument that, hey, you guys need to focus on economic populism. Put those 2 together and we're gonna have a winning political recipe. So the op-ed was published in the New York Times, and he makes a few key arguments in it. For one, he says that the woke politics, as he calls it, damaged the brand of the Democratic Party. He gives a few examples of what he considers woke politics, terms like BIPOC, Latinx. I think the Latinx thing is kind of beating a dead horse at this point. I think there's universal acceptance that Latinx was not popular, no one liked it, and I think the Democrats have dropped it for the most part. And to be fair, I haven't heard BIPOC used in a while. The other argument he makes is that the defund the police platform is unpopular. I agree with him on that. And I think the messaging from Democrats and even progressives has kind of moderated on that issue, but in terms of actual policies that are being implemented and carried out in certain municipalities across the country, that's still continuing. And I think that's a disconnect with the national Democrats and the local Democrats that I think the Democratic Party as a whole needs to come to terms with. Because if you're experiencing, an anti-police type, policy agenda locally, and you don't like it, you are likely gonna blame national Democrats for it as well. And I think that's what played out in the last presidential election.
Yeah, I mean, look, guys, out with woke, in with rage. How could it be any more TYT than that? I mean, that's literally what we've been telling you guys for the last couple of years, if not the last 10 years, right? Who was the first against Latinx? Who was the first against the phrase defund the police? Not because we weren't enraged about police abuse. We talked about it all the time, but we said that is not the right strategy to go after police abuse. It'll be counterproductive, right?
No, I think going after actual examples of police brutality and police abuse is fine. I don't think that hurt the Democrats.
No, I'm saying the phrase hurt the Democrats.
Oh, defund the police.
We went after the actual abuse.
Yes.
That doesn't hurt Democrats at all. That's you fighting for the average guy.
Correct, yeah.
And we did it in the way that now everybody's coming around to like, oh, maybe we should have done it that way, which is, look, what happened to black citizens in this country was horrific, and we covered it with rage. And you all saw it for the last 10 years, right? But whenever a white guy was also shot by the cops in a similar way, we also showed that. And we're like, this isn't just a race problem. This is a class problem, and this is a systemic problem, right? So that way, nobody's getting isolated and feels like, oh, we're not addressing them, et cetera, because we should address everyone. We should be fair, right? We should fight for everyone. So this is exactly what we've been saying. And I think that is correct, and that he's gonna show you polling that we've showed you 1,000 times. And to me, what's interesting, Anna, is not that they're coming around to an obviously correct position, and the polling has always indicated it. But why they're coming around to that now, right? So that's what's so interesting, but let's give them more.
Okay, so as I mentioned, he makes a few key arguments, including, just kind of running away from the woke politics. He also says Democrats can't just energize their usual voters in the coming elections. They need to win over new voters, which is absolutely true, particularly independent voters, right? The swing voters. Those are really the individuals who determine our elections, especially those who live in the swing states. And then finally, he wants to put 1 and 2 together. Democrats can shed their old brand and win over new voters by going all in on economic populism. He writes that it is time for Democrats to embrace a sweeping, aggressive, unvarnished, unapologetic, and altogether unmistakable platform of pure economic rage. We should not fear that running on a platform of seismic economic scale will cost us a general election. We've already lost enough of them by being afraid to try. I think he's right about that.
What do you mean? I think that's TYT 101. That's exactly what we've been saying.
The story's not about us, okay?
No, but it is. Because it's important, because Anna, it's gonna lead to the second part, right?
Okay.
So we won on message. The question is, are we going to win on messenger? And do the Democrats mean it, and are they actually going to deliver?
Okay, we'll wait and see. And also the question is, which economic policies are we talking about here, and are they going to actually be beneficial? Because look, when you and I think about economic policies that make sense, I think about the new parents who need to get back to work, but they can't afford childcare. So universal childcare, I think, makes a lot of sense, and it has to be universal. Policies that are universal have widespread support, and they're harder to repeal in, upcoming, congressional agendas. And so I like that idea.
You know what TYT's always been about? Taking on the corrupt, greedy establishment. For us, it's the corporate media. We've been fighting that fight for over 20 years. For the cell phone industry, it's the same story. A handful of massive corporations ripping you off. That's why we're partnering with Noble Mobile. They're the only wireless company with the same mission as ours, to fight back. Their no bull plan offers unlimited data for just $50 a month. But here's the best part. For any data you don't use, you get cash back. Real money you can spend however you want. Stop letting your unused data pad the pockets of billionaires. With Noble, you take control over your data. And by switching to Noble, you're directly supporting TYT in our mission of bringing you honest, independent news. So give Noble a try and make the switch today. Scan the QR code on the screen now, or visit go.tyt.com/plan. That's go.tyt.com/plan.
In California, we actually have the highest minimum wage of any state, and for good reason. Obviously, we have an insanely high cost of living. So I was very much supportive of the minimum wage increasing in California, but it's had mixed results, including a lot of. Yeah.
So you're worried about $20 minimum wage?
No, I mean, it depends on the context, guys, because look, $20 is a lot of money per hour in a state like, let's say, Mississippi, right? In California, you're making $20 an hour. That's not enough to live.
Yeah. So of course it depends on the context. But yeah. Anna, if the new range that we're arguing over is $15 to $20, that's a beautiful range.
I know. Look,
right?
It doesn't even matter. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty. My point is, just be smart about what you're pursuing. And don't just go like full steam ahead on policies that you haven't thought through and would be implemented in a weird, like ham-handed way.
Yeah, but they're not even, look, we'd be lucky to have them implement any of these policies. That my real concern is that they're not going to implement them. So guys, look, the reason why I'm telling you we were right is not just for like unbearable bragging or whatever. That's not that interesting at all. That's about egos, right? It's because they're gonna tell you the right message. They finally figured it out, right? But then what I'm worried about is they're gonna come back and tell you the right messenger is Buttigieg, and when he wins, the right way to approach this is to do nothing. That it was a nice marketing campaign to win, but when you win, you really shouldn't do any of this.
If I had to bet on what is likely to happen if the Democrats take his advice seriously, what you just laid out will be the outcome, right? It'll be a great marketing strategy. Buttigieg has been a corporatist, he will remain a corporatist, that'll never change. That's who he is to his core.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And that's why I'm telling the audience, for whoever of you are out there who used to believe in the Hillary Clintons and the Joe Bidens, guys, if you've now come around to the Carville position, that we were correct about the message. Forget us, to Anna's point. It's not about that. The point is that that message was correct, right? So when we tell you the messenger matters, it matters a lot. Please don't pick a corporatist. Please trust us. It's not about us, it's about you. If you make the wrong decision and you pick a corporate suit to deliver this message, no one will believe it, and then you won't be able to win. And if you pick someone who is not earnest, and they get into office and they don't deliver, it'll destroy the Democratic Party, it'll be over.
Carville's messaging here also leaves out a huge puzzle piece that I think is very relevant to most voters. And most voters would like to stop sending their resources abroad to other countries, okay? Especially for war. And so Carville doesn't get into that at all, but if the Democrats think that they can just go along with business as usual as it pertains to foreign policy in the Middle East, even with the way that our government has handled Ukraine, whether Biden administration, Trump administration, the American people aren't happy with it. And so Democrats have to address that. They need to provide evidence that they're actually rethinking the way they've approached foreign policy in recent years.
Yeah, so look, as we're gonna get to, I think Tucker is attacking the Republican and Democratic Party as a concept from the right. We've been attacking from the left for about 20 straight years now, because the reality is that a great percentage of the American people actually agree on about 70% of the issues. There are 30% we definitely disagree on, and vehemently so, right? But the job of the Republican and Democratic parties historically in our lifetimes has been to keep us fighting and never realize that we agree, so they could actually serve their donors instead. So if this is Carville, and look, I'd love to have James Carville come on here and have a real human discussion about this. I would hope, I mean, he says we should go with economic populism. We're the epicenter of economic populism, right? So does he mean it? And that goes to the very, very core of the Democratic Party and whether it can be salvaged. And we're gonna find that out in this election. If they go in this direction and they go with the right messenger, then they're going to run headlong into the #1 issue that they never talk about, which is yes, but when you win, are you gonna deliver for your voters or for your donors? And if their plan is to trick the voters and deliver for the donors anyway, that will absolutely obliterate the Democratic Party. It won't exist anymore because people will be so furious at the lack of action. I'm so curious whether the James Carvilles of the world understand that, or if they just think this is a new trick.
I have no idea what's in his mind, but I do think that this is a way better strategy than what he had suggested early on in Trump's second term, which was sit back, do absolutely nothing, don't fight Trump, just let Trump and the Republicans hang themselves. And the Democratic voters have spoken, they did not like that strategy. So James Carville himself has clearly regrouped and has a better strategy for how the Democrats could move forward. Finally, I just want to give you the specific examples he gave of economic populism. I already mentioned the minimum wage suggestion, but there were others that I do agree with wholeheartedly, including what he says in graphic 5 here. We should not fear an America with free public college tuition. Public college being the main wording here to focus on. I totally agree that public colleges should be tuition free, but for Americans, let me continue on. With 63% of US adults favored in a 2021 poll. And then he also says, or when 70% of Americans say raising children is too expensive, we should not fear making universal childcare a public good. Yeah, I mean, being fearful of that is insane to me, considering the fact that it has widespread appeal among the American people, both on the left and the right. People are having a difficult time raising children in this country. It is too expensive, it is too difficult. You have to have a dual income household to make ends meet. So both parents have to work in this economy. What do you do with your children? There are young couples who are asking themselves that question as we speak. So this is something that again is gonna have a broad appeal for voters. And when you're talking about trying to convince the swing voters to come onto the Democratic side, I think that these are the types of policies that could make the difference.
Yeah, so those polls are literally in my book that I wrote 5 years ago, right? And it's Injustice is Coming. So it's not like the polling changed. People have always wanted universal child care. They always wanted higher wages. They always wanted lower drug prices. These things are super obvious. So why now? Because the establishment finally realized, oh, the pulp that we're giving them, the garbage, the obvious talking points that we're giving them is not working. So why don't we actually, for the first time in our lives, look at the actual polling and go, oh, it turns out our policies are actually really popular. That's true, that's why I'm on the left. If your policies weren't better, I wouldn't be on the left, because I have no attachment to partisanship or labels at all, okay? So now another great piece of news here is, you've seen us say for years now, guys, this whole thing of progressive, what does it mean? You have to separate out economic populism from the culture wars, right? So if you lump both of them in together, then you've got a problem, because they use the unpopularity, whether you like it or you don't, the polling is clear, the unpopularity of the culture wars, and they use it to smear economic populism, which is also under the progressive tent, right? When we talk about labels. So now for the first time, Carville, an establishment figure, is going, oh, wait a minute, those are two totally different things. We should actually talk about it as different. So the culture wars, by the way, oftentimes, almost always started by the right, and I tell people on our side, much to a lot of folks' chagrin, don't fall into that trap. It's a trap, right? So that's totally different than Bernie's economic proposals, which have always been massively popular, and what attracted us to that side of the political spectrum in the first place. So that's great news that the establishment has finally figured that out. Then now, of course, the next question is, do they mean it? And that's what we've been talking about here. And so, but Carville also talks about new voters, as you pointed out, right? And guys, that's the other thing that Carville's now finally correct on, which is, and where a lot of us have to be. When we're winning the popular vote over and over and over again, as was the case for at least 20 years, right? Then okay, you don't need as much persuasion, maybe you could use other tactics, etc. But when you lose the popular vote and you lose all 7 swing states, it is incumbent upon that party, that side, to win over new voters. If you don't do that, you're not gonna win the race. So for a while, some on our side had this ludicrous idea of, no, we just yell at the voters and that'll show them, right? That doesn't win over anyone. You yell at the people in power. You don't yell at your fellow citizens, right? You welcome your fellow citizens in, because guess what? They also love these policies. That's why they poll so high. That's not a poll of Democrats. Those are polls of the whole country. Let's give them what they want. It's not that complicated. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.